We got a lot of candidates, well done.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Andrew Jackson, and I'm studying at Torridge Tavistock up in Devon. I have been asked why I'm doing this, one of them being my wife. Repeatedly she's asked me why I'm doing this. I'm sure this is going to get an awful lot of groans. I was a Tory member at one point, and I apologise now.
You were.
I am 17 years a veteran, served in 2 9 Commander Regiment Royal Artillery, based in the Royal Citadel at Plymouth.
Well done. Thank you.
And as so I used to join a lot of the forums on the Conservative website, especially about the MOD and our armed forces. One evening I was doing one of the talks, and they were talking an awful lot about cyber warfare. That seemed to be the main topic of the evening. But I picked up from colleagues that I'd served with who had become officers and senior warrant officers. And they were telling me about the state of the armed forces, especially the army. And the fact that the discipline was falling behind, but more worryingly so was the fitness.
Yes.
Because the senior warrant officers and senior officers are not allowed to shout at certain individuals within the armed forces. Now, unfortunately, sergeant majors and regimental sergeant majors were only born to do one thing, and that is to shout. And I am living proof of that, because very often I was summoned to one of the warrant officers' office to be told that I needed to pull my socks up. So I took a sharp breath and I put my little virtual hand up and said, "Would I like to ask a question?" And they finally came round to me and said, "Yes, please do." So I started asking questions about the discipline, why it was falling to pieces, why the fitness was going. And I stated there and then, the way it's been explained to me by still serving senior officers, that if we carry on the way we are, it won't happen now, it won't happen in 5 years, in the end, we will get a kicking.
Yep.
Because the standard of personnel that are going through the recruiting centre are not up to scratch. That doesn't mean to say that I'm against people who may be homosexual, because they're just as good as any other soldier.
Yep.
It's due to the fact that while they're in basic training, they are not allowed to be shouted at. If they don't feel like doing something, then we'll have a day off. There is now an attitude in the armed forces, in serving units, that if they are feeling stressed or missing mummy, they can have a bit of time off. If on exercise, if they go to the medical officer and say they're feeling stressed, just so your information, so you know, there are now serving soldiers that are not allowed to carry weapons.
Oh my God.
They are not allowed to carry weapons in case they hurt themselves. So in my opinion, they are not fit for purpose.
Yeah.
While on exercises, if someone's feeling stressed, when they come to an evening and maybe they're having a break, or it's part of the exercise, they're doing nighttime manoeuvres, they'll put mine tape around that vehicle. Anybody that's ex-military know what mine tape is. It's just a strip of white tape. It could possibly be orange at times, but they put white mine tape around that vehicle. The British Army, being the British Army, they practice ambushes all the time, whether that's vehicle-borne or on foot. If you have mine tape around your vehicle, and I'm sure you all know what they are, with a thing in the army called thunder flashes, Chinese firecrackers. Strike them from lots of big white bangs and all that fabulous stuff. If you're feeling stressed, they're not allowed to initiate Chinese firecrackers around the vehicle. So I pass comment is it's not the bang you've got to worry about, it's what follows it.
Yeah.
Yes. From personal experience. So I'm putting all these points forward, and the adjudicators were getting slightly itchy. You could see they were getting a little bit, I'm going to stop this. So in the end they said, that's very valid points, Andrew, but we're not talking about that tonight. So I said, well, we need to talk about it because it's actually happening. He said, well, we're not, we're talking about cyber warfare. And I didn't know at the time there was a retired colonel who was also watching over the evening's discussion. So he put his little virtual hand up and he said, why are you doing this? Why are you not letting that gentleman speak? Not that I am a gentleman. He said, because he's telling the truth. And the guy said, because we're not discussing this tonight. So that's where I was at the end of this discussion, thinking, I'm having second thoughts about this. What finished me off on a personal note was when Michael Gove turned around and said, and I quote, Tony Blair thoroughly deserves his knighthood. That's when I knew it was a con.
Yeah.
My regiment is a very small regiment. We were linked to 3 Commander Brigade. So being an artillery unit, but it's still very small. Because of the invasion of Iraq, 6 former colleagues of mine came home in a box. They needn't have been there.
Yeah.
After I left the armed forces, I worked in Iraq for 9 years, doing the obligatory security. I went from Baghdad to Tikrit, to Mosul. I'm sure some of you have heard of Mosul. If you're that way inclined, it was one of the most exciting parts of Iraq. Me personally, I was trying to hang on to everything. There was no need for us to go into Iraq.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go on a run.
Yeah.
Various people have said to me, bad, but you made a lot of money out of it. I did all right. Bearing in mind we had no backup because I wasn't a member of the armed forces anymore. I took the chance and I went away, did it, and lucky I got out of it. But there's a second reason why I joined Reform. And when I tore up my membership after Mr. Gove made his statement, I think the term is politically lost or homeless or whatever. And I'd looked at Reform a couple of times, so I gave them a ring. I gave them a ring. I rang them, whichever way it comes forward.
Thank God you did.
So, I was talking to a gentleman, chatting away, putting my points forward. He said, well, what do you think then? I said, well, I haven't made my mind up really. So I'm sort of playing with the idea. He said, do me a favour. He said, if you decide to join, could you please fill out the application to stand as an MP? So I went, all right then. My wife laughed at me, as I knew she would. She's ex-police officer, so you get the sense of humour, or the irony of it all, because she said, you can't stay out of trouble for 5 minutes, but that's by the by. I had my final interview, believe it or not, while I was in the Maldives. They phoned me, they emailed me and said, would you like to do your final interview? I said, well, I'm actually away. And they said, well, no matter, we'll do it when you come back. I said, no, let's do it. I'll give up 2 hours of beach time to be interviewed. And I did it on purpose, really, because I just wanted to make them feel jealous. So I put my loudest Hawaiian shirt on and got in front of the camera. But there's another reason. Farming. The gentleman there knows far more about farming than I ever will. I grew up in rural Oxfordshire. And to give you some geographics of where that is, I grew up 4 miles from where Jeremy Clarkson has his farm. Wow. And we used to cycle past that farm very often. Farming is being ripped off. Yeah. I've done some reading. Again, I appreciate that I do not have the experience that that gentleman that just spoken has. But when you speak to farmers and they come and speak to you and say that the grant forms that they fill in are all overlapping each other, and they're more complicated than they should be, and then when you're told that the farmers phone the advisors, and even the advisors don't know how to fill the forms in, then you know there's a problem. For me personally, and the gentleman did touch on it, is supermarkets. I've got a real thing about supermarkets. Predominantly Tesco's, as it ironic, because I understand that the CEO has just taken a pay rise. his pay now is £9.4 million a year. Very nice if you can get it. But what it actually shows me is that there is room in the market for these supermarkets to pay farmers more.
Yes. Yes.
So it's a con. You've got the form filling, the land management, as the gentleman pointed out to you, planting flowers instead of trees. Planting flowers instead of trees, but you've got MPs telling you we're facing food shortages. Now, if anybody can explain that to me, please do. Because I may not be the most intelligent man in the world, but if you're suffering with food shortages, what's going to happen, and we did see it during the pandemic, food shortages started to get short in the supermarkets for whatever reason, and people started to fight. Now if you imagine that on a grand scale, what's going to happen? Society's going to fall to pieces. I read an article recently, and they say that we are only ever 7 square meals away from society breaking down.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
That's 7 meals. First couple of meals, people will say, yeah, all right. Then when you start seeing the children going hungry, then it starts to, the ball game starts to change. If I'm fortunate enough to be elected, and I'll say it in front of all of you now, and you can hold me to account if I don't do it, I'm going after the supermarkets. In whatever shape or form it takes.
Yeah.
But I'm going to expose the corruption, because I have no evidence of it, but I'm certain there's been some deals done where, if you can explain it to me, how can politicians destroy the very thing that feeds their people and bring in Mickey Mouse cheap foreign imports? We have a farming industry that is second to none in the world. And that has damaged the very fact that the farming being at such a high esteem has actually damaged farming in the UK.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're all saying, why is that? Some might do, but I did hear some yeses. Because they're bringing cheap imports in that British farmers cannot compete with. So for me personally, it feels like to me that the prices have been raised that much higher so they can sneak in cheaper food. If you want to bring food to the UK and feed their population, then you raise your standards to the same standards that our farmers work to. If you don't, you're not coming in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where I am with it. I am angry, and I'm not even a farmer. I have travelled the world, not in all the best places in the world, and I'm just going to finish off with this and leave you with this thought. I've been in some really crappy places. I never expected to come home and see young families and pensioners struggling to put food on the table. They either heat their homes during the winter or they feed themselves. To me, it's wrong. And I will stop it if I can. Thank you.